Previously on the Game On podcast.
I was very confident, and I reckon Macca was fantastic with that next week. No, do the crime, do the time. No, we're not going to try and do anything stupid. We're not caught bullshit. No, I was guilty. Move on.
Yeah. I remember at the start of that grand final week where there was a lot of noise made about taking legal action and getting the lawyers in, and I remember being pulled into a meeting with, with Rhodey and Macca and a few of the other leaders, and Macca I remember standing up and just saying, "Nah, this is not happening. We're just moving ahead. We've got a job to do, and we're not going to sway from what we have to do." So, as always, Macca's team before himself. So, it was no surprise.
Sportscast SA presents Game On. Game On. South Australians' destination for everything sports. Local, national, and international sports. AFL football, soccer, basketball, golf, baseball, tennis, cricket, and any other sports played in this wide world. And we're going to have a blast doing it. So sit back, relax, and let's do this thing. Welcome to Game On.
And welcome to Game On. My name's Pete, once again joined with Malcolm in the studio and Anthony Harvey obviously talking about the premiership. We couldn't not play that, but more importantly, Macca obviously about his self-sacrifice for the team rather than the individual performance.
He was pretty blunt that he'd done the wrong thing. He said, "No, that's it. Move on. We've got a premiership to win. Move on." And the boys delivered in spades and won very easily. It was nice and relaxing to be thrashing Port in a grand final.
Yes, it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it just makes that premiership taste a little bit sweeter, doesn't it?
The beers were going down.
All right, mate, let's get into Around the Grounds.
Around the Grounds.
All right, and today around the grounds, we're going to look at the SANFL round 12 games, round 13 preview, and some ladder positions. The SANFLW's finally reached its grand final peak, and we've got obviously a bit to talk about there, being Norwood and South, and some cricket. But to kick us off first in the AFL, let's have a little bit of a listen to Matty Nix.
Yeah, we had two really solid weeks of training through that period. So it started this morning, actually. It started with our SANFL side that sort of set the scene, and it's an encouraging day for our footy club today. Our SANFL team went up against Glenelg, who have been really powerful in the SANFL this year. Put a performance out there that sort of gave us confidence that we'd got the break right. We freshened up mentally and physically kept working. And so it was really pleasing to see the squad play really well. So even, it just led into tonight. We started so well in the contest, and it's a great sign for where we're trying to go for this second half of the season.
To beat GWS in the contest is a significant note for your team. So where's the gain been, mate? How do you change that up to be able to get to that point to stand up against?
Yeah, it has been. It's been something we haven't been able to do the last 3 or 4 times against the Giants. As you said, it's critical in winning games against them. So we knew that coming in. It's the work we've been doing, and we, although it hasn't gone our way in the first half, we've now sort of locked in on where we're heading, and sort of moved on from moments that we can't do anything about, and said let's just play each moment as it comes. And I thought the guys did that really well tonight in a game where we were challenged. They kicked several goals in a row, and then that's been an issue for us. We were able to put it to the side, be a goldfish, move on, go again. I think we knocked 3-7 in a row back. So many positives out of tonight from a team point of view, and then obviously some individuals had some outstanding nights on the back of that.
So what did you do better at the end when they were challenging a bit that you haven't done in the past?
We were a little bit further ahead than where we have been throughout the start of the year. There's some stuff. There's small shifts that we make to the way we play, small shifts in structure that our guys nailed tonight. We really got it right. It's never perfect, but when it wasn't, we didn't panic. You know, I thought it was a really mature effort to hold in the end where they were obviously taking us on. They had nothing to lose in that last quarter and they attacked the corridor. They had opportunities, but our guys just kept going, just kept ticking over what we needed to do. So really pleasing. The game's not perfect. And we played against a very good side that if you do that, they will punish you. But it was as I mentioned, the most pleasing part was we didn't then dwell on it. We moved on. Now, we might look back and go, 5 goals is a little too much. I think it was 4 in a quarter and then another one. But we found a way to bring ourselves back, not just to get ourselves back in the contest, but to actually run over the top and knock through 7 of our own. So it's an area we're working on and have been for a number of years. It's not something new, but tonight was a step in the right direction.
Probably Captain Obvious, but Taylor Walker in that second quarter, what he means for you structurally just makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, it helps when experienced players come back in and are able to help at key moments. And he is one of those players that he's played enough football now that he knows what works and what doesn't. And he's able to position others at times as well and give a crucial contest, when we need that.
Did you see Thilthorpe down the boat today? Or?
I did.
What did you think?
I quite like him. It was nice. It was really, it was good to see him come back. The main thing for me was he got through the game. And I thought he was a really important contributor to that performance, along with another, 17, 18, 19, 20 guys.
So Matty Nix there obviously almost giving us our run sheet today on some of the key points. It's a brand of football that can clearly stand up, but they're not doing it for long enough. Is that probably a fair call or fair assumption?
I think it's a little bit overboard. I thought GWS were pretty disappointing too. And I think they showed a couple of things. Murray back's been pretty important for the Crows. Sop, son of Piano, in terms of Michael, and he did a good job on Toby Green.
Yes.
And they just sort of fall away. They rely a lot on Whitfield from defence. I thought they were really disappointing. Mm-hmm. And how much talent's in that side and on that list. They should be a top four side.
Well, that's the most concerning thing, isn't it?
Them. Yeah, they've now lost 5 of their last 7. And, yeah, they've got a few injuries, but they haven't got it's not a huge long one. No. So, they've been disappointing. So,
Adelaide's attack on the ball was obviously pretty good. And right at the end there, obviously, the journalist asked the question about Taylor Walker and how important he is about directing traffic, which we did talk about last week. Yeah. Does he still remain that most important player for Adelaide moving forward?
Which is a huge worry. At the age of 30, 33, 34, you can still mount a big case for him that he's Adelaide's most important player.
Yep.
Which for mine's a real worry going forward. Look, they need to get Thilthorpe back in the side. Look, he's a mile better player than Himmelberg. We all acknowledge that. And look, I thought straight away was seeing that Adelaide side in the SANFL, I thought, shit, there's suddenly a big chance this week. Mm-hmm. My other question mark is Strawn, because he is a better actual overall footballer than Riley O'Brien. He's got better touch, better feel, can mark and that. But he plays an AFL game and he looks like he's gone about the 10-minute mark fitness-wise. So why can he run an SANFL game out and yet at an AFL game, fitness-wise, he looks gone?
Is it a case of positioning being slightly different in the SNO? It shouldn't be. I agree. Yeah.
So, I just don't get that. That was probably my bewildering point out of the weekend.
Riley Thilthorpe, like you mentioned there, making his way back through the SNFL. We weren't sure what they were going to do last week. Do you think it was a good call just to gain some touch?
Yeah, I didn't mind him playing just the game back there. I think he should play this week against Brisbane, but I got the feeling from listening to Nick's there that he might play one more in the SANFL.
Yep.
So
it's hard to change a winning team, though. That's the other thing. But horses for courses.
I think he's that. For Adelaide's future, he's so important. Now, do you worry? Oh well, fitness. So we want to give him another one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I mean,
I'd play him, but I can see why they won't.
Results-wise, all right, they're not going to impact on the finals themselves, but they could have obviously trip a few teams up along the way. Is that the goal for the remainder of the season, that they do try and take some of that opposition sort of run into the finals away from them?
Oh, I think they just want to put their own best foot forward. There's a lot of players playing for their career. There's probably at least 10 on the list at the moment at Adelaide.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be playing for their spot next year. So there's a hell of a lot still to gain just because they're not going to play finals.
Yep.
Yeah, so the season doesn't end in that regard.
Rankin obviously taking his game to a new level once again. Teammates are just starting to understand how good he could be and where he's going to and where he's moving to. And that's just part of that evolution, isn't it?
Yeah. Everyone knew how good he was as a junior and that. Like, he kicked 5 in the grand final in the 18s to be the key player.
Yep.
Getting South Australia home. And look, Luke Valenti was captain of that side, so I probably had a bit more interest than normal.
Yep.
May have rushed to a mate's house and Jeff Wilson around the corner to watch a couple of those games.
Yep.
And that, so, yeah, he's pretty special. He is easily their most player with the most ability.
Mm-hmm.
So,
were you surprised that Gold Coast sort of let him go, or was that a matter
oh,
of...
no, they tried to keep him. Don't worry, they desperately tried to keep him.
But were they forecasting a little bit for some of these academies a few years ago to try?
No, I don't think so. No, they thought he was going to stay.
Right.
And then he actually changed his mind.
That
might have been something happened off field where he wanted to come back.
Right. Yeah. Question without notice, do you think Lukosius will be back?
I think it's a possibility.
Will it be for Port or will it be for the Crows?
Yeah, I think this case is for each side. It's going to be interesting to see. Adelaide have got a bit more to offer in terms of trade things and all that than Port. So, yeah, I think it's a possibility.
Yep. Do you see him fitting into Hardwick's team, so to speak, his next premiership team, as he called it?
I still think so. Yeah, because I still think he can play either. He can play forward and he can play. I love him at halfback or back pocket because he's got such a beautiful leg.
Yep.
So I don't mind him either spot.
Question without notice, and again, want to talk obviously about the GWS game with Max playing on Toby. Very, very good duel that they've had now the last 2 or 3 times that matchup's gone about, and I reckon Max has probably got the chocolates again.
I think that was probably his most comprehensive.
Yes.
I think him against Green a couple of times have been about even.
Yep.
I thought Son of Piano dominated, won that duel easily.
So then you're looking at, obviously, we just talked about Lukosius. You've got Perry from Melbourne, talking about potential players that could come to the Crows. Perryman, Perry, Baker, Daniel Berry, who I did have on my list, but he obviously signed on today or early on today, so he's off that list, and Tim English. Now, obviously, you're looking at maybe replacing a player for player. Now, if Max can get some midfield minutes and start to become that Bontempelli role in the middle, then maybe Lukosius does go, or they do go after him on the basis that they could probably bring him back in the backlines.
So maybe. I think he's a good player. They've got to sit side. He's probably that bit taller than Max. He doesn't stand the tall, where Max can stand the tall or the small.
Yep.
Where Jack probably doesn't stand the small.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and then you decide the back line's probably their spot where they don't. Do you decide that he's got more to offer up forward in the future than
a Phil Thorpe, Fogarty, Walker retiring?
It's with a Walker retiring and Petty, yeah.
Yep.
And Welsh to come in next year. And I think Welsh and Lukosius are a little bit similar.
Right.
The floating third tall sort of role. So, yeah, there's a few decisions to be made.
Well, as you said, potentially 10 players playing for their career. Obviously, Adelaide getting the job done over GWS. All right, let's move on to Port Adelaide. Let's have a quick listen to Kenny.
What's been your reaction to the reaction from everything?
Oh, no, my reaction is pretty simple and pretty straightforward. It doesn't change. I have to go to work and do absolute best in the footy club and help the footy team and the footy club get back on track. Every team at some point through this season, bar one, has had a a time where they haven't played anywhere near what they'd like to, and it's currently our turn, and we've got to turn that around quickly. So my week's been around, all the energy I've spent has been spent around trying to turn this around really quick with the team.
So how's the group responded? Has it been more about challenging themselves, or the white noise from the outside? How does that?
Yeah, look, it's hard because I know everyone talks around the outside noise, and we do our absolute best to block that out. Sometimes it's nearly impossible to block it entirely out, but they're professionals and they know what they're here to do, and they're here to play football. The coaches are all here to work and make them better. All our staff are here to work to make the opportunity better for us, and the players are doing their best to turn that around for us. We're really calm about what we need to do, and we've just got to get about doing it. You know, there's no. You don't hide in an AFL environment. You actually have to. Fortunately, we review every week, win, lose or draw. So you get to review every week. So you get challenged every week to try and get better, because unless you're absolutely winning the whole thing, you're looking to get better.
So obviously, Kenny, they're probably the man that's under the biggest amount of pressure, I suppose, this week, and it showed in his after-match interview on ground. Talking about obviously in the press conference there, you know, that they're relatively calm within the four walls of Port Adelaide, but it doesn't seem like that from the back line, from the outside.
Yeah, and I thought it was a really average game too. The bits I saw, I was at Noarlunga, so I saw the highlights and saw a bit of it, and then spoken to a few people since. So from what I saw, it was, and I watched probably about a half all up. It was pretty average. And look, Jordan Sweet, just because we don't like a rule, the rule is give the ball back to the umpire.
Yep.
Don't hand it to your teammate.
Yep.
I'm sorry, it's been done. For goodness sake, think. Don't criticise the umpire on that one.
And it got highlighted a couple of weeks ago.
Do it.
Yeah. Port Adelaide obviously win just, ugly for both sides, as you've mentioned. Is it a case of delaying the inevitable?
Possibly, yeah. Big game for them against Western Bulldogs this week.
Well, every game becomes big now, because as soon as they lose...
It was a prick of a game, though.
Yeah. As soon as they lose, they could be in a bit of trouble.
Higgins missed goal. Why the guy handballed to King in the goal square instead of trying to kick it himself and put King under way more pressure. There was some clangers by both sides.
Where can Port Adelaide improve? Because it seems like the big three at the moment have gone missing at some of the big moments, and you're asking a number one draft pick from a couple of years ago to almost put the team on his shoulders. I don't think that's as fair.
They rely on those three.
That's
I
what
wonder
I'm saying.
on.
It's not fair.
Yeah, but Rosie, it depends whether Rosie's body's getting better. I'm not sure how much his injuries he's carrying, because they need him to. They need the three of them to dominate.
Yep.
Let's be honest, they're the three they're relying on.
Yep. Obviously, Kenny mentioning that he's a little bit emotional, but he rode every bump, tackle, goal that St Kilda had kicked in the last quarter, but Port Adelaide didn't score in the last quarter, or didn't score a goal in the last quarter. So
and Higgins kick a bloody drop punt.
Yeah, this around the corner stuff.
Crap.
We've seen McKay go away from it a bit more this year for Carlton, and it's probably been to his benefit. So, yeah, absolutely. Ken might have the players, but do the players have him? That's my worry.
I still think there's question marks up forward. You know, Dixon's gone. Marshall, Georgiadis, where they combine, whether there's then enough physical presence there. Question marks on defence. You know, it was quite ironic that Dirk Thatcher played very well and did a good job on King, because if Radaglia hadn't hurt his hamstring at training, Dirk Thatcher was going to be the one dropped. So how ironic's that?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Very, very interesting. Port Adelaide obviously just getting the job done there against St Kilda. All right, let's get on to a few of the hot topics. I know this one's a big one for you, mate, but umpiring decisions once again making big headlines. Obviously, the big one was against Essendon, or the big ones were Essendon and Geelong, and we talked about it last week about why the AFL are coming out and giving a press conference on decisions. Now they're not going to do it.
You can't go chop and change. And look, as an umpire, the Rush one is just, that's horrendous. Look, let's be honest. if that's another nationality, we're accusing that of match fixing. That's such a bad error as an umpire. It's an error in law. It was horrendous. The player was under perceived pressure. He was in the goal square. 2 players in close proximity, all clear 1 point.
But
that's just blight. That's just.
But was it a case, though, that I know the one that was closer to him near the goal line was probably a lot closer than the player running in who almost ran away and said, I'm not touching this?
The player can't run away. That the player makes that effort to run away. The instructions to the umpire are on that one, all clear 1 point. He can't play it. He can't play on it and try and bluff that one.
All right, so we know the Draper one, obviously, with the player going back.
Yeah,
that was a bad decision.
That's a poor error.
Now you mentioned last week, and you were very hot on it, about 4 umpires is not working. Let's go back to 3.
Yep.
Is it a case of umpires are being lost, and I think you have mentioned this before, that umpires are getting lost with their positioning.
Yes.
So it's a lot harder for them to make these decisions because of angles.
It just hasn't worked. And I hated today where Dylan came out and tried to say that umpiring's never been better and that crap. I do wonder, look, was it a smokescreen? We've got Laura Kane's been under the pump, has really struggled, has been massively out of her depth. We'll just come up with something to try and wipe all the heat and get the heat onto Dylan and that. And because it was crap.
Yep.
It was, no one sees through it. No one falls for that bullshit.
Yep.
It was pathetic.
I have had this on the run sheet for a couple of weeks, but I think you've brought it up perfectly now, is that another senior executive at the AFL, Andrew Dillon, has got a very young and inexperienced team around him. Do the AFL need a couple of fresh faces to inject some new ideas for the game moving forward? Because at the moment, it either seems stagnant or they just don't know what's going on and they've lost touch with the fan and the clubs.
It was bizarre. That position stayed open and for ages, where they were supposedly headhunting people, and then Laura Kane got it. And I'll be honest, I may have received a message from prominent person a minute ago where he's just said that can't be a person with no footy experience. And I just think it's massively showing up. I couldn't agree more.
Yep. A little bit of a worry there for the AFL. Yeah. Anyway, Essendon made Geelong look slow and Carlton made Geelong start again.
Yep.
Carlton made Geelong look slow and old, and yet Essendon made Geelong look like $1 million.
Yeah, Essendon were pretty average. Yet again, Essendon have failed in a crunch situation. Yeah, okay, the umpiring in the third quarter hurt them, and there were some shockers, and that did change the momentum. So, yeah, out of that. But still, each time they're having a test, Essendon, they're failing.
Yep.
So, huge game, Essendon Collingwood Friday night.
We'll get onto that one in a minute. Sydney and Collingwood are slow starters, and it can be a weakness that can be exploited. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, a little bit. It's been amusing. Some Sydney supporters, you would have thought they were bottom the way they've carried on this week. They're still 2 games clear.
And the only 2 games they've lost is by a combined of 4 points or 5 points or whatever it is.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy. Hawthorn are on a hot streak at the moment, playing as good as anyone.
Yeah, they are. And, they should have beaten Port here. They lost that game. Port didn't win it.
Yep.
And you think if you change that result around, they're in the A at the moment. They're probably the surprise packet of the year, Hawthorn.
You led me into one of my questions that I was going to ask. Who is it, Hawthorn or Fremantle, that have surprised you the most this year?
Hawthorn.
Yep.
I still thought the Fremantle list and all that, they were very good on the weekend. They probably took the game on a bit more, surprised.
But they've done that over the last few weeks.
Their ball use was good.
Yep.
Tracy and Amos are giving him 2 genuine targets. So,
have they gained some confidence from their win against Melbourne?
Yeah, maybe. And then they were
a team that's contending.
Then they were disappointing against Western Bulldogs, but good on the week. It's funny, their away games, they seem to be good unless it's in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
It is indeed. Revised top 8. Who have you got making the top 8 now with about 8 rounds to go? The teams between 3 and 14 is an interesting little graphic that comes up every now and then.
I've got to be honest, it's not I'm not sitting on the fence. I just really haven't gone through it enough thoroughly. I know Essendon and Collingwood's. They're saying Essendon have got a hard draw with teams, but guess what?
but
They don't leave Melbourne.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That farcical situation.
So currently at the moment, you've got Freo sitting third, Essendon fourth, Geelong fifth, Collingwood sixth, Port Adelaide seventh, Brisbane eighth, Bulldogs 9, GWS 10, Gold Coast 11, Melbourne 12, and Hawthorn 13. Now, percentage is going to play a big part here, and the only three teams...
It depends there because of the draws.
Yeah. The couple of teams that are outside of the 8 that have good percentage at the moment is the Western Bulldogs at 120.6 and GWS at 108.4 and Gold Coast at 106. But like you said, where the draw falls for which teams is going to be very, very interesting.
I think it almost comes, you can make a case of Port Western Bulldogs this week is a mini elimination final.
Mm-hmm. So 8-point games coming up for a lot of teams.
Massive,
lot of teams. Hawks 6 out of 8 weeks. Geelong forward in Tom Hawkins obviously missing out as well. Hawthorn obviously we just talked about being the team on a hot streak. Where are now Geelong with Hawkins now being out for about 6 to 8 weeks?
I thought it made them look better with it because they weren't quite as predictable and they moved it a bit quicker. Like, I'm sorry, I reckon Father Time was bashing Tommy's door down anyway.
Yep.
So I don't think it's going to hurt him.
Dangerfield tackle. We talked about it before we got the result, and we were almost having bets on whether it was going to be thrown out by a certain time. You won that one by about a 10-minute period. Did the result create a little bit of confusion, or has created some confusion?
Maybe a little bit, but it was amusing where people carrying on afterwards saying, Dangerfield special treatment. No, Dangerfield, is it his fault that he's actually intelligent and spoke eloquently and basically knocked the prosecutor out
from the get-go?
Court-marsh bowled Lily no score, and he was just too good.
Yep.
And I just think he argued the case and put it that well, because I was following the transcript pretty closely. In the end, I was thinking, he's got to get off that.
Yep.
I read as they went to the deliberation went for ages.
Yep.
And we were mucking around when I'd left and
yes.
that I'm in front on the minutes here, just mucking around.
Yep.
But I'm thinking the whole time he's got to get off that, and he did.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right, let's go through a couple of the results very, very quickly. The Brisbane Lions defeating Melbourne there by 5 points, and that was a bit of a seesawing game, wasn't it?
It was. Did go back and forth, and Brisbane really made a couple of shocking clangers at the end with Cameron's drop mark and the missed goal as well.
Yep.
Where they could have cost it.
And Melbourne looked $1 million there for
the second quarter.
Yeah.
They probably played their best quarter in a couple of months.
Yep.
Brisbane got out of jail, but that may be a very important get out of jail in the end.
Yeah, bit of a kick in the bum. The Bulldogs getting up over North Melbourne by 17 points. I think that score flattered North Melbourne a little bit in the end.
Maybe a little bit.
The one we have talked about a little bit is Sydney and Sydney and Fremantle. Freo getting up by a point there. Kick after the siren. We don't see them too often, but it didn't take a long enough run up for me.
He didn't run. He was bizarre.
Was he worried because of the umpire told him not to move off his line?
Well, he still should have been. I'm thinking on the angle there. That really shouldn't matter on that one because he should be going straight on that one anyway.
Yep.
So, but it did seem to affect him. I agree with you on that.
The big one we talked about last week was the Gold Coast Suns over Collingwood by 11 points. That was a mini do-or-die game for Gold Coast to keep them in the hunt.
And Collingwood, Gold Coast had played the better footy, and then Collingwood came back. Was 3/4 time and said, they're the dynamic fin-, and they hit the front.
Yep.
When they hit the front, I thought, they'll go and that. But to Gold Coast credit, they really responded well there. So Graham was very good. Rao, such that midfield bull, and he's just so strong.
Yep.
I agree with Kane Corn's criticism of Moore. His judgment at the moment is terrible.
It is, yeah.
Of when to go, when to hold back.
Yep. I think we might cover him a bit more next week because I wanted to talk about him in a little bit more depth. Geelong obviously getting up over Essendon by 45 points. We've sort of talked about some of the decisions there. Did you think that the decisions were the catalyst for that turnaround? Because it was
was
earlier in the
seesawing.
game.
It was seesaw at half time, and then Geelong ran it. Yeah, you can make a case for it. It was certainly poor. Put it that way.
Carlton getting the job done by 61 points over
predictable.
Richmond. It was a bit predictable in the end. And the one that had probably a little bit of interest is that West Coast had probably their best team for the last 18 months on the park, and yet Hawthorn beat them by 61 points and quite convincingly in the end.
West Coast were disappointing.
All right, mate, we're going to take a very, very quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk the SANFLW Grand Final, some cricket.
At the home of football.
Yes, we'll talk about that as well. We're going to talk some cricket, but on our Past Players, Past Legends segment, Tommy Warhurst Jr.
Yeah, looking forward to Tommy.
Absolutely.
You're listening to the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
Dents and scratches putting a dent in your day? Introducing Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide, your trusted solution for automotive woes. With over 2 decades of expertise, Roger Steen Crash Repairs guarantees top-notch service, restoring your vehicle to its former glory in no time. From minor dings to major collisions, our skilled technicians handle it all with precision and care, using state-of-the-art equipment and techniques.
Roger Steen Crash Repairs saved my car. It looks brand new.
Fast, friendly and reliable. I wouldn't trust anyone else with my vehicle. Don't let accidents slow you down. Visit Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide at 14 Penner Avenue, Glynde for quality service you can count on. And here's a special offer just for our listeners. Mention this podcast and receive a $100 discount on your repair. Roger Steen Crash Repairs Adelaide. Excellence in every repair.
All right, and we're going to make a little bit of a change to the batting order. We were going to talk the SANFL, the SANFLW and some cricket, but we might push the cricket back a little bit because we've got Mary Cavey on the line to talk all things soccer. So welcome along, Mary. We're talking all things soccer. So we're going to kick off with Adelaide United first. Obviously, your role at Adelaide United, and you're finishing up at the end of the year. And just tell us about the transition there before we get into some of the players.
Yeah, good to be back, guys. I've been Red Army president for 4 seasons now. Was secretary a long time before that, so been around the traps for almost a decade. But stepping down at the end of this season, the AGM's next week. Our new president will be voted in. Just time for a fresh face. I've ticked all the boxes I think that I can tick, and brought a few of my ideas in, which I'm pretty proud of. But don't want to overstay my welcome, and I think the new generation's got a lot to give, so ready to step aside. Fair call. Some player movement, obviously, at Adelaide United this year. You're probably closer to it from a fan's point of view than most. What are your thoughts on some of the ins and the outs at this time of the year? Oh, look, it's always a very dramatic time for the fans of Adelaide United. They're throughout the season, they're saying our defence is rubbish. We need better players. We need change, or yada yada. And then they went and sent off about a half a dozen of them, and then there was an uproar of we've got no players left. Where's our team? We're going to have to play all our kids. And they've made a few signings. It's obviously they're young, but there's a lot of promise there in the legs, having fresh legs. But there is some experience coming in as well. There's some Ollie Roos experience for some of the young ones. And the latest one is obviously a player from PSV, which is our new sister club overseas. They've sent us over a very experienced defender, 300 games in the Eredivisie. He was captain of Sparta Rotterdam there. He actually played with Craig Goodwin. So that's where the connection is, and Craig has been in his ear for quite a while now, since they were playing together a few years back. So, yeah, very excited to see what he can bring in terms of experience, but also leadership, and obviously just needing a really solid centre-back for a long time now. Yeah, pretty keen.
Two questions, Mary. How do you see that sister club arrangement working, and hopefully to Adelaide United's benefit? And the second part, different subject in terms of obviously still Adelaide United, but we are basically a club relying on buying and selling the player at a higher price than what we bought in for the club's survival and that sort of thing. Are the club ticking the boxes in that sort of regard, and will the money be reinvested, hopefully?
Yeah, so we recognise, well, most realistic fans recognise and understand that we are a development team in a development league, really. So it is all about bringing up players, training them up, getting them to an elite level so that they can then go overseas and succeed in the better league. So anyone that thinks otherwise is a bit head in the sand for me. But so it's always going to be a lot of turnaround every season. There's just a lot of ins and a lot of outs, and the A-League itself can be a bit of a recycle bin sometimes. The people just rotating from club to club to club. Some players have been at 4, 5, 6 clubs in the a dozen teams in the nation. So, but so look, we're always going to be about breeding youth, getting them to a good standard, and then essentially making money off them to keep the club surviving. There is obviously a balance there that they need to find to also be competitive and to aim for trophies as well, which is at the end of the day what us as fans want to see and what we invest ourselves in to see. Yes. So it's always a hard balance there, mate. In terms of PSV, it's going to be a collaboration. Obviously, like, they've been around a long time, but where they sit in their balance of things overseas is not dissimilar to where we are. They breed up from the youth, get them up to a good standard. So it's going to be about learning from each other, offering each other different experiences and different resources. I know that our new technical director, Ernest Faber, he's from PSV. He's moving here. He's bringing his family. He's investing, so he's going to bring a wealth of European experience over here. And I know that our football director, Marius, has just come back from over there. So he's seen firsthand how their club runs, how they're structured from their youth academies upwards. All that stuff he's brought back, and hopefully we can see some good movement within our own club from that.
So you talk about, obviously, the A-League being a little bit of a development league. Is it a case, just listening to what you're saying there, is it a case that the new direction, I suppose, for Adelaide United is a little bit more youth?
I think it's always going to be. I think Adelaide's already created a proud tradition of creating and growing talent from within our own ranks. And at the end of the day, we're never going to have a lot of money to be able to bring in fancy names. So, we are a small city in the scheme of this country. We're not the Sydneys and the Melbournes with endless resources and endless sponsorships and millions of dollars to spend on big names. So, it's usually always going to come from the local leagues investing and sorry, my cat's making a constant appearance here.
Making a special guest appearance.
Macy of the Red Army. But going out to the youth leagues, you see Carl Viet and Marius and Nathan Cosmina out there every week, checking out the NPL, seeing who's performing. That's where they're bringing in their youth, and it's always Adelaide born, Adelaide bred, as the saying goes.
You've led us beautifully into what we wanted to talk a little bit about, was the Australia Cup, and obviously Campbelltown City and the Modbury Jets qualifying for the round of 32. That's exciting.
Yeah, brought up by Paul Bowden too. Yes, thanks to Paul.
Yeah, definitely. Very proud, obviously, having a couple of teams make it this far. Sad to see my own Metro Stars not continue through as far as they did last year, but look, Modbury are sitting, and Campbelltown have always been super competitive in the NPL. Modbury, I think, is sitting second behind Metro Stars, and Campbelltown aren't far behind. So they're consistent performers in the NPL, and they deserve the chance to get out there against the big teams across the country. And I'm sure no matter what they'll do, I say proud.
And obviously Adelaide United have qualified as well. So a bit of David v Goliath.
Skin of our teeth. Adelaide United making the bare 8, to qualify for Australia Cup. It's not ideal, not the way we want to do it regularly, but we'll be in the mix, and we've always done very well for a while there. It was called the Adelaide Cup, not the Australia Cup, because we were winning it almost every second year. So You never know. Maybe with the new juice we get in this year, maybe we can go further again.
All right, some would say let's get on to the real stuff. Obviously, the European Championships are on at the moment, quite topical. What are your thoughts so far, and what are your surprises?
Thoughts so far. Married to an Englishman. England have been pretty shocking so far.
Yeah.
They're talking about scraping in by the skin of their teeth. It's. But I think they've just got this cult following that they're always going to do well, and that they don't always necessarily, but they do have a habit of jagging it at the last minute and keeping you on the edge of your seat. So I don't know, maybe that constitutes good football these days. But no, look, I think
fair bicycle goal kicked by Bellingham too, Mary, to keep them alive. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And look, honestly, I wasn't a big fan. I mean, I'm fairly I don't like the big egos in players. I just want to see beautiful football, but I see the celebrations and the, who else, he says, with his arms out, and it's like, mate, you didn't score in a single group game, and this is your first goal of the tournament. But anyway, look, it was what they needed in that moment, and it was an absolute perler. But yeah, look, I think I don't see them winning it. I hate to say it. I'd love to say it because they're going to be my team that from birth. But no, I think probably a team like Spain or Germany will obviously take it out. They've just been more consistent, I think. Yeah. France are barely scoring. I don't know, but there's just not very many goals this year. It's odd.
There's been a hell of a lot of own goals too. It's been a percentage of goals, and a couple of them.
They were They were leading goal scorer for most of the group games.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's been a weird tournament in that regard, and Italy and France have both been a bit underwhelming, and I couldn't agree with you more on Spain and Germany are the two. And Portugal were very lucky to survive overnight.
And Spain and Germany play each other in the quarterfinals, so you almost sort of say whoever gets through that one will probably take it out. Yeah,
we'll take it out. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, France have been a little bit average. England have been shocking. Portugal only winning through on pens, and relying on old mate Ronaldo when I think he's definitely past his peak on a national level, unfortunately. They need to start making better decisions if they're going to get any further in terms of, who's making starting 11 and how they use their subs. But, it's been a fun tournament. We'll be out at the district at the casino on Sunday morning, bright and early. Making a ruckus with the England fans. Yep. Bring on Switzerland.
So we're all sort of in agreement. Whoever wins that quarterfinal between Spain and Germany will probably go through the final. Who is your other opponent? Or who are you thinking?
Oh, look. Going by the luck they seem to jag, I'm always going to say England. I just feel like they'll pull something out. Maybe they're just keeping all the good stuff for the bigger games. I don't know. Maybe they're just pacing themselves. Who knows? But yeah, look, they're always usually one of the final four. Aren't they? They always seem to get to that final four. And but no, I think Spain and I don't know. Yeah, England.
And as a QPR person, I want to see Eze score and his price skyrocket. So Crystal Palace sell him because QPR
can make some good coin
of the on sell. So that's my major interest. Yeah.
Oh, I'm just making sure none of my Liverpool boys get injured. Every time these big world tournaments come in, we come back with broken legs.
Well, we were hoping to have your partner, your lovely partner, on to talk some EPL. Maybe we might save that one up for a couple of weeks' time, and Malcolm will be hopefully nice transfer fee there on a couple of players would be very nice for QPR, and
he's the one.
We'll sit down and
I can tell you, Jason's already chomping at the bit at some of the signings Chelsea are making, and obviously Liverpool with a new manager, Chelsea with a new manager. There's been a lot of movement, so there'll be plenty to talk about.
Fantastic.
Really appreciate it, Mary.
Thank you once again, Mary, for joining us, and
thanks.
Best of luck early on. What was it, Sunday morning there?
Yeah, it's going to be a long night.
Where you were watching the game, Mary? Where are you all going to? Sky City.
England supporters will be at the district at the casino, which is that big sort of open air, big screen bar in there. Yeah, sports bar.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Take care, guys. Have a good one. See ya.
To the Game On podcast. We'll be right back after this short break.
And we thank Mary there for her time and talking
very
all
much
things
so.
soccer there, and absolutely fantastic just to touch base with her, and
Yep.
especially with the European Championships going on at the moment, but also with Adelaide United. And we wish Mary obviously the best with her moving on from the Reds, but hopefully we can get her on from time to time and talk all things EPL, and we've got some interesting games coming up after the break. Before we move on any further, let's get our AFL tips for round 17. Collingwood v Essendon.
I'll go Collingwood.
I'll go Collingwood as well. North v the Suns. Is this an opportunity for North to, the Suns to take an away scalp?
I'm going to go for them. I think they're too much ability not to, and it is a huge game. If they lose this, they won't play finals. They win, they're still alive.
Yep. Is it a case of that Damien Hardwick's got them building just beautifully towards the finals, maybe?
Maybe, because they did play very well last week, and a bit ironic that Jared Witts would have been pretty happy that he drove a dagger at Collingwood last week. So, yeah.
I'm with you. I think the Suns are building quite nicely. If they win, they're still in it. If they lose, I think it's going to be almost impossible, but stranger things have happened. Port Adelaide and the Bulldogs. This suddenly becomes an 8-point game, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because it's here, the old if in doubt, go the home side. I'll go Port, but it's a toss the coin.
All right. Now, I didn't ask this one a little bit earlier, but I'm going to ask it now. With Port booing Hinkley at the last game and obviously showing a bit of disdain, what do we see the crowd being like this weekend? Are they going to vote with their feet and protest?
Yeah, it might be. Yeah.
Because we all know that obviously the fan base is sort of calling for him to go.
And Adelaide did it a bit last week as
did a
well.
little bit, yeah.
So Adelaide's crowd was under 30,000. Admittedly, the weather on Saturday wasn't great.
Yep.
And it was cold and all that. But geez, and I think people are more picky now. Back years ago, we just went.
Yes. Yeah, rain,
Pissing
hail, or
down,
shine.
whatever. Didn't even get mentioned.
Yep.
You just went.
Yep.
Where now a lot of people don't.
I just see this not only being a tough game, I just
game.
think that from a club point of view,
be
whether there'll be a
interesting.
protest.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I think if they'd lost last weekend.
Definitely. Yep. Again, question without notice, do you see Hinkley surviving if they lose? Or do they stay the course?
I'm now thinking I can't see him coaching next year.
No. I'm talking about does he get the chop before the end of next year if they lose this game, or do they stay the course for the remainder of the year? Or does the crowd then become even more volatile?
Yeah, maybe they may go, right, we're going to have to.
Yep.
So who knows? But then they've got to do the payout. They've got to get that approval. And, so there's a few things there.
Yep.
When you're a club who gets AFL handouts, that it's not quite as easy doing that. So,
And the Melbourne media seem to love Hinkley. So, well, not love him, but they sympathise with him, which I understand. You know, we're all human and you don't like to see somebody bagged on time and time and time again. I sort of get that part of it, but it's a ruthless industry.
Yeah, and I rate Hinkley as a coach.
Yeah,
I just think he's been there too long.
Yep. I'm going to go the Bulldogs in an upset. Geelong v Hawthorn. It's down at
Cardinia
Park.
Yeah, I'll go Geelong, but it's again very much their record down there though is very good overall.
Yep.
So,
and how many times do you think Hawthorn have travelled down there in the last little bit? I don't think it's too many.
No, I did hear Sicily interviewed after the game when I was driving home from Noarlunga. It's a reasonably long drive, so you had plenty of time to listen to footy on the way home.
Yep.
I think it's 4 or 5 years since they've played there.
Yeah, so it's a fair time. So it'll be interesting to see how the young ones take it. GWS v Carlton. Again, another 8-point game.
It is. GWS, I've been too disappointed. It's 5 out of 7. Look, whether the fullback comes up from his injuries, Taylor.
Yep.
And that's a big one. But no, I'll go Carlton.
I'm going to go Carlton there as well. Fremantle v Richmond. Fremantle for me. Melbourne v West Coast.
Melbourne.
St Kilda v Sydney. Sydney for me. And Adelaide v the Brisbane Lions over at the Gabba.
Brisbane.
Is it going to be as close is it going to be close, or do we think that this one could go all the Lions' way?
Brisbane should win, but they've had some close battles lately. A draw here where Adelaide should have won, and last year Adelaide were pretty unlucky up there. Went down by 2 goals and had a couple of pretty average umpiring decisions against them, so they were a bit unlucky last year. So yeah, probably Walker after being out for so long. How does he go second up?
Yep.
And after having to do the flight to Brisbane.
Yep.
With a bad hammer and tack, so we'll see how that goes.
Going to be interesting. Brisbane probably for me but I don't think it's going to be as clear cut. But it just depends. Teams are getting on rolls where they kick 7 or 8 goals, and it's hard to peg those ones back, especially against the good teams. All right, let's continue on with the SANFL round 12, mate. Some interesting results in the end, with Adelaide getting up over Glenelg.
Yeah, I did think Adelaide were a distinct chance before the game, just that got a few players back, and he's just have those extra 3 or 4 of AFL guys on your list. All of a sudden, Thilthorpe, Burgess, Gallant up forward.
Yep.
All of a sudden, at 3-pronged, probably a bit better that, all of a sudden your third is getting a Burgess or a Gallant of a defender, which they haven't had that all year. Schoenberg, while he's a good SANFL player, I do think
he struggles at the next level. Yep.
Strawn comes back, and Strawn's a good SANFL player as well. So, they're just that bit stronger, and thought, they are a distinct chance, and they came through there. So.
We've talked obviously in the AFL about Thilthorpe, but what were your thoughts on Thilthorpe returning in the SANFL and how he played? I thought he did enough just to sort of get some touch back.
Oh, look, he's bulked up a fair bit, so I think we're all going to wait to see how he goes at AFL level. It'll be interesting whether they, and the way it sounds like he'll play another SANFL game. Not sure on that one.
Mm-hmm.
As long as he doesn't play the week after, because they play Norwood the week after. So
maybe 2 in and
that'll do. That's enough.
Yep, fair enough. You're right about him. His bulk size. He played it down in an interview after the game saying, I've only put on about 3 or 4 kilo. He doesn't look that way. He looks like he's put on a good 7 or 8 kilo.
It's probably just more, again, it mightn't be as much as that, but he's just now got the right balance. He looks better structurally almost, in terms of looks the right thing. And so I think every footy sport is waiting to see how he goes.
Yep.
So,
do Glenelg worry, though, really in the scheme of things?
Well, it was also a loss and it hurt their percentage. And look, percentage may well decided in the
where
SANFL
everybody sits
this year. So it was a big result for Glenelg. So wait and see.
Obviously, Adelaide getting up over the line there. Central Districts getting up over Port Adelaide.
Yeah, did the job. While it was close first half, just too good, just too much depth compared to the young Port side with their injuries and then falling away. They do lack depth, Port.
It's a worry, and we'll cover that, I think, as the season goes on, because they've got some hard decisions to make as well, not only at the AFL level, but also at the SANFL level as well. Sturt doing the job over West Adelaide, I think predictable in the end.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, did the job. They continue to be around the mark, Sturt, no doubt about that whatsoever. Yep. There is a bit of a gap at the SANFL with the better side. So, it was predictable.
Yep. The surprise for me, North Adelaide getting up over Woodville West Torrens. North have been around the mark for the last 3 or 4 weeks.
It was at Prospect as well, and they are a better side at the Wembley of the North. Chock-a-Block's name for the name for North Adelaide.
Yep, Prospect Oval. Yep.
So they are a better side there, yeah. So again, though, it's a big loss for Woodville West Torrens, so it does put 2 games there. So they play Glenelg this week, so that's a huge game this week now.
Yep. And then Norwood getting up over South Adelaide in what could be described as a bit of a scrappy affair.
Yeah, it was. It was a bit of a slog. Look, it was windy at times down there. It was slippery. Ball handling from both sides was a bit questionable, and then Norwood pulled clear in the last. Look, I do have to say, in the last quarter is one of the funniest incidents I've seen in footy. So at Noarlunga, we were next to the Nord box, and Jackson Callow, who
previous guest,
and he will be on the show again.
Yep.
has taken a mark. Now, it's cold at Noarlunga, so you've got your cars around the ground. So Craig, Fester, Pake, and now Megan Pake stayed in the car and that. And so Fester's just done this throwaway line. Jacko could nearly get him at the car and wake Megan up. Sure enough. And he's 40, he's a reasonable distance out. So the car's at least 50 metres away. So the chances of it happening were, obviously B's dick.
Yep.
Sure enough, his kick banger hits the car.
Yes.
And we are all pissing ourselves laughing. Megan immediately texts Fester, the bastard hit the car. And that. Now, Fester then played up.
Yep.
That had been a broken headlight.
Yep.
That.
It caused all this damage. Big repairs are needed. Yep.
Played it up.
Yep.
And that. And again, the planets align because Jackson Callow comes off the ground for his rotation. And he's, getting the hamstrings rubbed. And I've gone, hey, Jacko, you hit Fester's car.
Yep.
Oh, shit. Sorry, Fester. I owe you a beer. And again, we're all just like, and I'm half waiting for Jade Rawlings, Twig to walk around the corner
and say, "Hey,
Twig can be reasonably intense." But
yep,
we were, that the game had been broken up. I think we were 29 points at that stage, so we were virtually home. So it was no dramas. And then a couple of people then, so I put it as the highlight of the day, and then people ask, how much damage did it do? Well, Fester's then found a car accident previously and put that photo up, and a couple of people did fall for it.
Yep.
He also got a message from someone from the ABC.
Yep.
Who'd also fallen for it, who wanted to then get him on the show about thing, and Fester's going like, hang on.
Yep.
Let's not go.
It's the bit of banter here. Yep.
It's just a bit of fun, and Jacko, we played along with it and all that. And no, there was no damage, but geez, it was just the whole sequence that had actually happened was bloody funny.
Yep.
So yes,
one for the Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon crowd there, just to have a bit of a working over and
as I said,
give each other a bit of crap
after the game. I said in 10 years' time we'll say remember that day down at Norwood.
Yes, one of those classic stories. Obviously the ladder as it stands: Norwood sitting top of the table, Sturt sitting second, Central's third, Glenelg fourth, and Woodville West Torrens fourth. Now, North Adelaide, fifth. Now, North Adelaide are only two games out of the four. Do we see, out of the five, sorry, do we see them potentially coming or not?
It's an outside chance still. Still 2 games is still a hell of a lot.
But there's still a few games to obviously go.
Is. There's going to be at least that. If they'd lost that game, that was it.
Yep.
For sure. So the 5 was definitely decided. Now it's an outside chance.
Yep. Well, let's talk about this week's games because it could go their way. Sturt playing South Adelaide at Thomas Farms Ovals, mate.
Sturt for
me. Glenelg v Woodville West Torrens. Now, this is where it becomes interesting for North Adelaide because if Glenelg win...
Yep. Suddenly, and then they win, they're only one game.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Look, I'll go... since it's at Glenelg, I'll go for Glenelg to rebound. But honestly, it is a toss of the coin.
A 4-point game in this case.
Big game.
Yep. I'm going to go for Glenelg as well at home. West Adelaide v Norwood at Hisense Arena or Hisense Stadium. Now, this has always been a bit of a tricky one.
Bogey ground there. Norwood have had some stinkers at Richmond at various times. Look, I'll still go for Norwood. We should win.
Yep.
But it is a worry at Richmond.
Yep.
So, yeah.
For me as well, I'm going to go Norwood. But West Adelaide's always been that side at West's home ground that makes it difficult. And then the one that we are talking about here is North Adelaide playing Port Adelaide. And like we said, if North win and Woodville West Torrens lose, then it's only a game the difference.
Then it suddenly is alive. Look, I will go for North there as well.
I will go for North there as well. All right, let's move on to the SANFLW. We have reached the crescendo of the SANFLW with Norwood taking on South, or South taking on Norwood, but it's at Norwood Oval, and there's been a bit of rumblings in the background that it's Norwood's home ground.
Yeah, there has, but
how hasn't it been transferred to another ground or Theberton?
No, there were a few things with this. It was actually done a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
In reality, now it's on at 4:05.
Yes,
and that was the TV's requirements.
Yep.
So therefore, it had to be at Norwood because you had to have the ground which satisfies the TV lights requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And the only other ground was either Nord or Alberton. Well, you're not going to give Port Adelaide effectively with what's going on with Port Adelaide a prime SANFL fixture.
Yep.
So I think therefore it was all, it was at Nord, and so be it. The Nord have happened to be in it. But
that decision was made a while ago.
Yeah,
this is what I think a lot of people are not 100% sure on.
Yeah.
This decision was made a long
and it
a
should have
long
been
time ago.
announced a few weeks ago when it wasn't.
Yeah.
I think that it could have been done better in that way. And just the time slot means it had to be at Nord.
Going back to last week's game, Nord v Glenelg, or Glenelg v Nord at Stratorama there. A bit of an interesting clash.
Seesawed a bit.
But the wind sort of played a little bit of a part in that.
It did. Back and forth, but Nord just a bit too strong in the end.
Yep. Nord's form over the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even just slightly longer than that, 5 or 6 weeks, has been reasonable. Without getting a little bit of luck along the way a couple of times. It just looks like they're peaking at the right time of the year.
Maybe. Look, I think South are convincingly the best
and
side.
this is what I was going to say.
And it showed in the team of the year sort of stuff, where there's 5 or 6, 5 South girls, and along that, South ladies, along that regard, I just think they're the best side, and they should win it. But geez,
anything can happen in a grand final.
and they were the best side last year, and they had no luck whatsoever, and they were crucified a bit in the umpiring last couple of minutes.
Yep.
That was terrible.
Yep.
So in that way, I'll tip South.
I'm going to tip South as well, but I think Nord are going to give it a fair old shake, and why wouldn't they? They've played some pretty good footy in the last couple of weeks, and you've got nothing to lose. It's a grand final and anything can happen.
And I'll be up on the scoreboard.
All right, mate, let's take a very, very quick break. When we come back, Tommy Warhurst from the Norwood Footy Club.
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe. Past players, past legends, past legends.
And tonight we are pleased and privileged to introduce Tom Warhurst, recent inductee into the Norwood Hall of Fame. Of course, he wore the famous number 44, 246 games, 45 goals, obviously premiership player in 82-84, life member, as I said, Hall of Fame, advertiser team of the year in 89, 3 state games, obviously the Crows' first couple of games as well, and we will go into that. And welcome aboard, Tommy.
Thank you, lads. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, mate. We normally talk with most of our guests about where it all started. Where was you? What was your junior club, and where did you start your footballing journey?
Yeah, well, I grew up in an Aussie rules family, so that helps. Father played for Nord, and brothers played Aussie rules, so that was that was my start. Back in the 70s and 60s, there were no sort of district clubs you played for, so started playing footy at primary school at St. Iggy's there at Queen Street, Norwood, in sort of grade 3, and always enjoyed my Aussie rules. There wasn't much choice. You either played Aussie rules or what was the other choice? Basketball, probably. So, it was just Aussie rules back then.
And I'll say that Tommy basically has always bled the St. Ignatius and Norwood colours too. Very fanatical about both.
Well, isn't St. Ignatius red, blue and yellow anyway?
Yes,
so
yes,
Crows
yes.
as well?
Bit of that.
It was.
Yes.
It had those colours before the Crows, probably after the state colours, but had them before the Crows. Yeah.
And so, Tommy, obviously, as you said, you're famous father, and you were... One thing I think always to your credit, Tommy, you were very you knew your Nord history and things there, and were very much Nord, and came through the Nord juniors, Nord under-19 premiership player as well. Tommy, go through a couple of your highlights in terms of junior-wise, mate.
Yeah, well, certainly, I grew up on the wrong side of Kensington Road, so I was lucky that the old man was a life member at Nord. Otherwise, I would have had to go to Sturt. So that was the first bit of luck.
Yeah, well done.
I can remember as a 15-year-old, getting an invite from a guy called David Bertelsmeyer.
Yes.
I don't know what position he held, but it was under Wally Miller at the time at the Norwood Footy Club. And I can remember being invited out to the under-17s and sort of umming and ahhing whether I should go, but intimidated at the time. but got dropped off by the old man. We trained at Morialta High School in those days. So, from there, got a game in the under-17s. Ross Porritt was the coach of the under-17s back then. And I can remember we didn't have a whole lot of success in our first year of under-17s. But as you said, the next year, under-19s, I sort of graduated and, Duncan Fosdyke was the captain.
Yes.
And, we had probably 7 or 8 guys from that team play league footy and probably had 4 or 5 premiership players in 82 from that team. Guys like, Rick Neagle and Fozzie. And
was Tomo through there as well? Was Greg Thomas through that one as well?
Greg Thomas was around, and Neil Pearson played some league footy, and Jack Gallagher played some league footy. Dean Renfrey played league footy.
And of course, Fozzie was a junior. Jason Archer could seriously play. Unfortunately,
he could.
knee injuries there. But Fozzie dominated as a junior as well. Like he did win the 19s medal that year as well. So
yeah, I think Macca won the
17s,
17s medal that year, and Fozzie won the under-19s. So we pretty dominant. We beat Port Adelaide in the grand final, which is always nice.
Yes. So go through. So you make your league debut in 81. Only the one game, and that, but it was against Westies at Footy Park. Go through any memories, against Glenelg. Against Glenelg. I apologise, Glenelg.
Yeah.
Any particular memories of that one?
Well, I played the first minor round game in the reserves and must have done something right, and then got the call up for the Bays down at Glenelg, and started on the bench, and in a team full of my premiership heroes from years before. So I gather that not many of them knew my name, let alone what I was good at. And I think I had a short run at some stage, had a couple of kicks, kicked the goal, but then got taken off, and I think we lost that game in 81. And then I think I got injured later that week at training and missed probably 7 or 8 games before I came back and played in the reserves for the rest of the year.
So obviously in 91 you make your debut.
81.
81. 91. You were drafted by North Melbourne. Just let us in on, because not a lot of people know how the draft system worked back then. You decided not to go?
Yeah, it wasn't as complicated as it is now, or there wasn't as there wasn't a process driven by the AFL now. I think every AFL team had a choice of drafting someone.
Was it 2 Form 4s, and then you were tied for 3 years if you went? I reckon that's what it was.
I never quite understood that Form 4 thing, but my father had some business contacts who were on the committee at North Melbourne, so I don't think anybody ever saw me play. It was just word of mouth, and I can remember Barry Cable visiting me, my father and I, down here for dinner one night. Must have been some stage in 81, but I just I don't know, lack of confidence. Hadn't achieved much here in Adelaide, let alone thinking I could go to Melbourne and play. So so I decided not to, and North Melbourne dropped off pretty quickly, and then I had a Fitzroy in about 1980. Or maybe 5 or 6, got drafted when Fitzroy was going okay, but again decided not to go. Just my allegiances were at Norwood, and that's where I wanted to play.
You definitely bled red and blue, as I said. So 82, the start of 82, you started at centre half forward and played well against Port at Alberton as well, kicked a couple of goals in a win at Alberton, and then of course Neil Button came back, and then you ended up going back to fullback Tommy and settled in to a pretty resolute defence with Bruce and Jim Teal and that leading the way. Frank Stemper, Danny Jenkins, Wayne Schmal. It was a bloody good backline. Let's go through that side of things.
I fortunately did start at centre half forward for a few games in that 82 season. As you said, Neil Button was injured. I think that the team was that good that it sort of played around me a little bit. You know, I was a bit of a decoy perhaps, and I don't know what I did wrong to get a start at fullback, but Bruce Winter, I think, was in a hurry to handball.
Yes, he wanted to get out of the fullback. Yes,
off and move sideways. Yeah, I mean, Bruce is not overly tall. You know, he might be 5'11", and not very heavy. And there was a lot of big forwards around. So yeah, I must have done all right the first couple of games, and got myself a job for life almost. Although I did play a lot at centre half back and had the run through centre half forward over the years as well when we were in really real trouble.
Because in the 82, and you would have, I don't know you well after you, one of your favourite games, I can guarantee, would have been when we absolutely pantsed Port Adelaide in front of, it was 17,500 and beat them by over 100 points on a warm, balmy day too, Tommy. And geez, that was a big night at the Red Leaves Club as well.
Yeah, it's always good to host Port at Norwood, and we had a good run there for a while against Port. We had a very experienced team, and they were transitioning in a fairly young side. So we strung maybe 10 wins out of 11 through the 80s and sort of mid-80s. And then, of course, they turned the tables and probably whipped us 10 times in a row in the late 80s. But, Norwood Oval was pumping, and I think that was a game I stood Tim Evans.
Yes.
I had a dream the night before that Tim was going to get 10. I still remember that vivid dream, but fortunately,
a dream or a nightmare?
Yeah, it was probably a nightmare. Was that the day Acey got knocked out?
Yes, by Ray Hupperts.
So,
yes.
Yeah, so it was a spiteful game as they normally are against Port. So but long memories, good memories.
What are some? I mean, obviously Norwood and Port are some of the rivalry that goes back a fair way. Were there a few other teams in that era there that you matched up pretty well with?
Yeah, I mean, people forget that there were a lot of good teams back in the 80s.
Bloody oath there was.
Yeah, the Bays had good sides. Sturt came and went a little bit. North Adelaide had good sides. Westies won a premiership.
Oh, Westie's side in 83 was a very good
strong,
side.
Yeah. So the only teams that really didn't figure in finals too much were South and West Torrens. But the other teams, they all had big forwards and gun forwards. And, it's true to say we didn't like Port Adelaide, but we didn't like a lot of people, and they didn't like us. And that was how footy was.
Yeah,
in
it was
80s.
tribal.
It was pretty spiteful.
Oh. Yeah, and Tommy, out of that, I reckon we always thought we underachieved. I've mellowed on that one. I reckon I've just become a bit more realistic as we're being older and looked through the other sides, and I've gone, hang on, Glenelg were a fair side. North Adelaide, in that 85, 86, 87 with that side, and I'm thinking, geez, so, and let's be real too, 82, the qualifying, we were in trouble at one stage, and then 84, and we will get to 84, your vital part in that, nearly gone against Centrals in the first semi. So it is such a fine line.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we probably should have made another grand final or two. I think we lost 3.
Yeah, we did lose some preliminaries
by less than a goal.
Yeah,
I know we had some,
against North Adelaide, a couple.
Luck there at time with kicking against the wind and for 3 quarters. Of that. But I mean, the other teams were pretty strong too, and probably everybody bar Port thinks they probably should have won another one. I think Port might have won 3 in the 80s, late 80s, or bookended the 80s with premierships, and everyone else had a go during the middle.
Now, Tommy, I want to take you back and test your memory on this one, and it's probably not widely known amongst the Norwood faithful. The start of the 1982 second semi, and you suddenly look over, and there's a particular Norwood player standing next to you. Now, go. What's you want me to keep going, or what's your memory? Yeah, the late great Jim Till. Now you've gone to Bruce. What the hell's Jim Till doing? You can ask him, and Bruce has replied, "Well, hey Tommy, I'm not that fucking stupid. Yeah, of course I'm not going to ask Jim Till." And the opening siren for this and the second semi start, and there is David Granger, looking around for Jim Till, and he has just run from the goal line and just ran up and hip and shoulder hip and shouldered Granger and said, "You touch anyone today, you're gone."
Yep.
Yeah.
And we never, and I've spoken about this with Barmy, of all the stuff Granger did, he never did anything against us because he was shit scared of Jim Till.
I'd
And weren't
agree
we
with
all?
that.
Yeah.
I mean, most of us were scared
Yeah.
of Jim, but Jim. Granger got me in a reserves trial at one stage. At least he told me he was going to do it, so I'll give him that credit. But Jim would approach Granger before every game, and as you say, basically say you touch one of my blokes, and I'll put you on a stretcher. So yeah, we didn't have any trouble with him, and rest in peace, Jim. He was a fantastic player, scary cat.
Yes.
Even at training, if you were matched up 1-on-1 and some competitive work, you always bled a little bit with Jim. So got good memories of that as well.
An elite leader, and but exactly that. As you've said, Tommy, he certainly had a wild side to him, and again, even as you said, even at training. Yeah.
What was it good to have someone like that in your back pocket to go? He's got your back no matter what. Yeah,
no doubt about it. They're very few people like Jim Till. I mean, as strong as an ox and determination and will to win, and matched by very few players that I've come across over the years.
Oh, and he was a very good player as well. He was fanatically tough. He was a very good player with shit knees.
Yeah, he had shit knees. I mean, there was I don't know who the surgeon was in the early or the late 70s, but he ruined it. Well, yeah, he didn't have much success with knees. We had Turbs on one leg, and Johnny Clark's career was finished. And there were a lot of guys with the same surgeon, I think.
Oh, you just think if those three had still been okay, you just think on the landscape, because we're not talking average players, those three. That's three. Yeah.
They were guns, weren't they?
Guns.
Yeah.
Absolute guns. So we go through there. 83 was a bit disappointing, but I still want to, that Westies forward line with, Lindner, Smith, Murat,
Luders.
Luders, Grosser. Yeah. It was an extreme, Jeff Morris, and then Conlon, and as the other one was, it was a bloody good side, and unfortunately they were too good for us. And then UCOP, Rick Davies on an on day when the Sturt midfield got right on top. It wasn't a great day that one, Tommy, the prelim.
No. Westies did have a good side. They recruited pretty well. Some of those Victorian guys didn't stay around too long, but they were there for a year, and they got themselves a flag. So good on them.
And then let's move on to 84.
Yeah, how did that start after you finished 83 in such similar circumstances as to going out a little bit earlier than what you would have liked?
Yeah, I can't recall the too much of the pre-season that year, but I can imagine that Barmy would have been pretty hot.
I think Barmy and Wally in that regard were always pretty circumspect and move on, and you can't change that day.
Yeah.
But does that
move on? We still had a core group of older players who wanted some success.
Yeah.
So we pretty confident that we could do well, although we didn't start well. Now I don't know why we were 1-6. I don't know whether we were just shit house or whether we had injuries, but we weren't very good early.
And of course, then the famous game at Theberton where Greg Thomas came off the bench and kicked 4 in the last quarter, where if we hadn't ended up winning that game, there was an amusing bit of that game, Pete. And I'll see again I test your memory on this one, Tommy. That Barmy, actually back then I very rarely went in the rooms, but I did go in the rooms after we'd come from the clouds. We were 7 goals down at three-quarter time to win.
Yep.
Walk in, and Tommy and Michael Aish were our 2 Nord representatives on the Channel 9 footy show. And both you 2 guys wanted to go in that night because the West Torrens representative happened to be Kim Dillon. And Barmy may have had some other things, private duties with, so Kim Dillon wasn't his number one. He wasn't
preferred
number one person. And he may have told both of you, I don't give an F which one of you 2 goes in there, but just go in there and give Dillon plenty of shit.
Yeah, well, it's a bit more to that. I mean,
Yes,
I think, Neil won't mind me saying that I think he was dating
Yes.
Dylan's
Yes.
ex-wife or girlfriend, and three-quarter time, we were, as you say, 7 goals down or something, and Dylan's come past our huddle at three-quarter time and had a few words to Barman, a few words to some of our other champions, and started twirling the ball like the basketballers do.
Yeah, and he did it in the last quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, and it
And
gave
then
everybody
missed.
extra motivation to get over the top. I don't know how much we won by, but it was sweet.
Oh, we won by a couple of goals in the end. We went all over him, and John Hall took a one-handed mark for us to hit the front, and the Norwood faithful, we really took over the pug hole in that last quarter. So it was a very enjoyable last quarter. The first 3 quarters weren't, but the last quarter certainly was.
No.
Got to ask, around about that time there, obviously some of the best SANFL days, the crowds, Malcolm, obviously a passionate supporter, was there for every minute of every game. What was it like playing in front of some pretty big crowds at some of these suburban grounds? Because we don't really get that sense anymore, do we?
No. I mean, they talk about showdowns now, Adelaide versus Port a couple of times a year. Well, there were showdowns every weekend here in Adelaide.
Exactly.
Because nobody liked each other, and they were big, substantial crowds for the size of the grounds.
Yes.
It's not like we were putting 17,000 into a ground that holds 60. We're putting 17,000 into a ground that holds 14. So people were hanging from the light towers and over the fence, and you could hear. One of the things I remember is just you hear everything, that the comments from over the fence. We probably heard Malcolm a few times giving us some advice, but
I may regret one day at Footy Park. I do apologise for that game, Tommy. Yes.
Yeah. That's okay. All's fair. But you hear opposition, and it's just huge. Even getting to the grounds was, trying to find a park in some suburban street. 800 metres from the ground. There was no VIP parking at any of these grounds, and then you had to run the gauntlet and go through the opposition supporters and always get a bit of advice. And it was just a great time to play footy and a great time for the SANFL.
It's perfect that you said that. It just happened last year, so not the season's just gone, sorry, the one before, so 2 years ago now, with the first gather round bit. And when I got there, and it just happened that Fanda and I were walking down Wood Street together, and I've gone, this atmosphere and numbers walking around at the moment reminds me of the Norwood Port game in 82. So, and Fanda's going, of course, you'd think of something like that, Malcolm, and all that sort of things. But it was, and it was just awesome to be in Pack Nord Oval again, but they were only AFL only allowing 10,000 in. Where, hang on, I've been in Nord when there's been 20,000 in there.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. It's still the best place to play footy for someone of my ability, anyway, and probably still the best place to watch footy because you're on top of the action. You can hear everything that goes on. So it's a fantastic place.
Now I have to ask, the Redlegs Club was still up and going around about then. What are your memories of the old Redlegs Club across the road on Wood Street?
Geez, there were some great nights, weren't there, Tommy?
Yeah. Although I've only just been reminiscing with some. My wife, and because we sort of got together when we were 19 or 20, so we had 10 years there, and it was just, the meals were great. The meals were mandatory. They were sort of they were taken off your wages at the end of the year. So most of us ended up having to pay money after eating their 20 rounds, and the supporter base. We had so many great supporters, and they seemed. I shouldn't be rude, but they seemed elderly then. They were probably in their 40s, most of the supporters and coterie groups. Yeah. Because when I go back there now, those men and women are still there, and now they're in their 80s.
Yeah.
But they love the place more than I do. So, they're great people. And upstairs, of course, you had to get past either Winnie or Jim Teal, and because the $6 or $7 entrance fee was a bit too steep. So.
And go through the kitchen, yes,
up the back through the kitchen, all sorts of ways to get up to Sam's. But it was just it was the place to be. There wasn't many nightclubs around, and people tended to go to footy clubs. The Bay Disco was quite popular.
Yeah.
I can remember me and a few Norwood blokes crashed that one night, and they wouldn't let us in. And it was all huge fun.
But it was, wasn't it, Tommy? Like, you catch up with people from every team on the Saturday night and buy a remarkable bit. If you hadn't on the Saturday night, you did on Sunday at the Bay, and you knew it was.
Yeah.
It was quite often anything which had happened on the ground was generally sorted out at Sam's.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with all of that, but the teams no longer catch up. But back in the 80s and prior to that, I can remember my old man saying that back in his day they would, catch the tram down to Alberton for the dinner dance or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So, they were, nicer breed of people back then.
So moving through with 84, Tommy. So the first semi, Centrals, it looks like we're nearly gone. There's a centre bounce. The ball is kicked. You come through, manage to pick it up on the half volley and just jam it onto your boot. I'm trying to think whether it was Makarachi Mark, that handball to David Payne, who kicked the goal, and suddenly we were back in it and ended up winning by 17 points where we came from nowhere. And that was, I reckon we all thought it, because we'd come home with a wet sail, and in terms of our form towards the end of the year, beat South pretty convincingly in the elimination. But then that first semi, and then the prelim where Glenelg luckily kicked the goal like drunken wombats and had 2 goals 14 at one stage. So
it's like an AFL score these days.
Yeah, sort of came. But yeah, your memory. Can you remember that? Can you remember that incident where you've got the ball onto your boot? Just jam that on.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it a few times.
Yeah.
It was a wet, muddy day at Footy Park, and I didn't sort of plough through the centre square off the line too often, so I don't know why I took it upon myself to charge in off the half back. Maybe because we were 3 goals down with 5 minutes to go. But I can remember Johnny Platten was in the middle, and for a few seconds there, the ball was in dispute. And, with a bit of luck, I did plough through and managed to handle the ball, cleanly. And I'd love to say I picked out whoever it was on the half-forward flank, whether it was
I think it was Matt. It was either Makarachi Mark then. It's annoying me that I can't remember.
I'd love to say that I, saw them, but I didn't. I just jammed it on the boot. But luck would have it. And then, we just, as you say, kicked the last 4 or 5 of the game and got over Centrals. For some reason, we had difficulty with Centrals. Yes. Through the 80s. We won more than we lost, but they had some good players as well.
Malcolm, I reckon now you've got to go back and watch that final because it's going to bug you until you find it.
Jeff Wilson might get a text message in a minute. And then, so the grand final.
Well, just before you go on to the grand final, what was the week like leading up to that? Because coming from 5th, the first team to do it, all right, we're going to talk obviously about you've won it, but what was the week like as far as we've got this, can we do it? Was there a self-belief there right from the get-go?
Well, there certainly was a self-belief. I mean, even mid-year, we'd beaten Port, a couple of times, even though they were clearly on top. We'd beaten them, and we always knew that come September that if we'd get a chance to play them, we'd think we were a fair chance. So, that was the feeling. If I remember rightly, we were very positive on our chances, and I think they knew that we liked our chances as well, which probably helped.
And we thank Tommy there for his time tonight, and I think we'll split that one like we do with most interviews over 2 sessions. So, but
revealed a couple of things.
He did. So some good talking points there. I can't wait to go through that and pick out a few of them for our past players. Early segment there as well.
Can't complain he wasn't honest.
Not at all.
Let it out a couple there.
Absolutely. All right, let's get on to happy days.
Happy days.
All right, happy birthday this week to the man who's in the headlines for the Adelaide Footy Club, Riley Thilthorpe, recruited to the Adelaide Footy Club with the number 2 overall draft pick in the 2020 AFL draft.
Yeah, look, he's Man Mountain. There's a lot of ability there. Probably uncharted a bit in terms of unchecked, or however you want to describe it. Hasn't delivered enough yet. Hopefully it's to come.
Absolutely. Thilthorpe debuted in round 6 of 2021 as he was impressive with 16 disposals and kicked 5 goals. His 5 goals is the highest ever by a Crow debutant. Jason Dunstall commented, the emergence of a future star.
Yeah, and Adelaide lost that game against Hawthorn down there in very close finish where, Ben Murray was unlucky for Taylor Walker not to get a mark paid in the last 30 seconds.
Yep.
So, we certainly kicked back and forth.
Yeah, absolutely. In round 13 against St Kilda, Thilthorpe kicked a match-winning goal over his head with his opposite boot in the last minute of the game, completed Adelaide's 36-point comeback. And because of that, Thilthorpe was rewarded with the NAB Rising Star nomination for round 13. Playing 14 games in 2021 and 11 games in 22. He had a solid 21 game season in 2023. And I think this is why we sort of thought that this year was going to be his year. But unfortunately getting that injured as well. I think this is why Adelaide thinks that he is going to be a star of the future if they can get him on the park.
Yeah, well, he's a pretty important player.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to cricket. 2018 Australian cricket batsman Aaron Finch breaks his own T20 international record, smashing 172 runs from 76 balls against Zimbabwe in Harare.
Harare,
yep. His stand with Darcy short of 223 is also a record.
Yeah, Finch, he certainly had his moments in T20 where he absolutely dominated. Probably fluctuated a bit back and forth. There was feast or famine a little bit with Aaron in that way, but geez, he did have some pretty incredible records in especially 2020.
T20.
But even one day it was 50-50 as well.
Yep. So the faster form of the game obviously suited him a lot more. Yep, or white ball. We move on. 1960 baseball. Yankees outfielder Mickey Mantle. I know because you love this one, mate. I thought I had to bring this one up. Hits a 3-run homer versus Washington. The 18th MLB player to hit 300 home runs.
He was a star, Mickey.
Absolutely.
Go the Mickey Mantle,
Go the Mickey Mantle. All right, 1977, very topical at the moment with tennis, and we'll cover this in a minute. Wimbledon men's tennis star Swede Bjorn Borg beats American Jimmy Connors 3-6, 6-2, 6-1, 5-7, 6-4 for his second of 5 consecutive Wimbledon titles.
What a legend.
And he retired so early too. Yeah. That's the other thing.
You wonder how many he could have ended up with.
He could have almost been the Nadal of grass when you do think about it. Yep. All right, and to finish us off on happy days today, mate, we're going to talk contracts. Kansas City Chiefs in 2020 offered quarterback Patrick Mahomes a contract which he agrees to for the largest contract for an athlete in sports history, inking a 12-year deal that ended up being worth $503 million.
Get you through the week, wouldn't it? Yeah, no, that's just obscene.
It is when you think about it, because teams are obviously privately owned and there's no real salary cap restrictions or breaches and all that kind of jazz. You're right. That is an obscene amount of money.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yep. All right, let's get into the extra time big finish.
Extra time big finish.
All right, mate, we're going to kick off with cricket. We did move down the order because we had to get Mary on a little bit earlier for time restrictions. But we've got to congratulate India on winning the T20 World Cup over South Africa.
Yeah, and South Africa got in the position where they really should have won, like needing 30 off 30 balls, and somehow they only managed to get 18 of their last 5 overs and just fell away. It was just maybe a bit of lack of belief.
Yep.
A bit of hoping it'll happen, not believing that we could actually do it. An average shot to get out. Look, Miller hits a full toss and he should have hit it for 6.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant catch.
Yep.
Changes the game. So, again, one ball really decided the game.
Yep.
If that goes for 6, South Africa won.
Yep.
Yeah.
India's turn to win, really, isn't it? When you think
of.
about it, they've been around the mark for so long and just haven't quite got the chocolates a few times. So it was their time to win. What are your thoughts on Kohli retiring? It seemed like half of the Indian nation was in mourning because of it.
It's not a surprise. So it looks like, I think it's Kohli, Jadeja, and Sharma. I think we're all saying. So, bit of a changing of the guard
Is
there.
Is it an end of an era for India? Or have they underachieved a little bit?
Maybe a little bit, but geez, their population is so big. We don't know about the next ones coming through.
Yeah, they could be twice as good and for twice as long. Yeah.
Who knows?
Let's stick with cricket, mate. BBL 14, the Strikers' new recruits, Jordan Buckingham and Alex Ross.
Look, I'm a big fan of Jordan Buckingham. I really rate him. He's a quality individual too. Pretty firm with his standards and beliefs. He got made 12th man in a game in Melbourne.
Yes.
And paid for his own flight to come back to play for West Torrens and that. So he's got a bit of character, Buck. So, I'm a big G. I'm wrapped that he's ended up at the Strikers.
What do you think about Adelaide losing Wes Agar? But they did trade for him because they've got this whole draft system that's a bit new as well.
Yeah, it is a bit different. But Wes Agar was a bit feast or famine too. He did some games, did go for plenty. So, yeah.
And your thoughts on Ross?
Yeah, look, just had some reasonably big cricket smarts, just probably knock it to the gaps at the right time. Certainly been around the traps, Rossies.
Yep.
Yeah, and that. So started off, ironically, and he's been Brisbane to the Thunder and now back here. So, yeah.
But this format does promote that where players are going to move around a little bit.
Yeah.
Question without notice, Adelaide are going to miss Rashid Khan?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Well, they missed him this year.
Yep.
It just didn't sound the same without him, actually.
Yep. Because he was their marquee player, wasn't he?
Yeah, so...
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate, isn't it?
Yep.
To finish this off on cricket, mate, 42 runs off of 1 over. Wow. And how could this happen? And will we see it more with the way that the format is with the game these days?
Yeah, maybe, but geez, there was some crap bowling in that. If you actually see the over.
Oh, no, I've seen the over. We put it up on our socials, and this is why I bring it up, because...
sorry.
No, don't be sorry, but it still needed to be punished, though.
Yes. Yeah.
I've seen some bad overs that haven't gone for as much as they have, but 42 runs in an over?
Yeah. Declaration bowling, we call it. It's crap.
Unbelievable. All right, mate, let's move on to tennis. Wimbledon is well and truly underway. By the time this podcast goes, we'll be almost through the first week. Goes to air, it'll be almost through the first week. But some Aussies in action on day one, Jordan Thompson and Volkic coming back from a couple of sets down in both their matches there to end up getting over the line. Alex de Minaur and James Duckworth are going to be facing off against each other in day two. Popyrin, Rinky Hichikata, there's a good name for you, a bit like Mickey Mantle. Chris O'Connell, Tanasi Kokonakis, obviously from South Australia, and Adam Walton will make out day two of Wimbledon action. Probably the hardest one there is probably Tanasi, unfortunately, playing the 17th seed.
Yeah, he's got a hard one first up, so yeah, all the best to him.
de Minaur, do we see him going a little bit deep in this tournament? Considering his form is good, and grass is probably his surface.
Yeah, he's an iffy one still. I hope so.
It's always hard playing a compatriot in the first round of a Grand Slam. But anyway,
he should be. He should.
He should win.
He should be Duckworth Lewis, and of course, the man who introduced Duckworth Lewis, of course, left us last week. So,
unfortunately.
Yes.
Just before we go, before we move on with tennis, Adelaide's League 2, unfortunately, didn't quite make it through qualifying, but still great to see him to participate in that as well. All right, let's move on to the NBA. The first ever father-son selection for the NBA has happened, and LeBron James and his son are now on the same team.
Incredible, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Whether they actually play at the same time, that's a different story. But they are in the same clubhouse now.
Yeah, remarkable.
It is, isn't it? And it just shows you the longevity of LeBron James when you think about it.
Yeah.
And apparently his next son is even better again. So they could almost have the starting 3 or
Yeah,
5,
why
3 or
not?
4.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the NRL State of Origin Game 2. Boy, oh boy, what a game. New South Wales just
Blew them out the water.
punched Queensland right between the eyes right from the get-go.
Yeah, so incredible. Yeah.
28-0 at the 33-minute mark, blitzed Queensland, and then obviously the final result was 38-16. But
It was over pretty early.
it was. Are we surprised that happened in front of 90,000 people at the MCG?
Oh, it's sport, isn't it?
It is, isn't it?
Deals us incredible results, shocks us at times, bemuses us at times. We love it at times.
Yep.
So now sets up game 3.
Absolutely. Obviously, back in Queensland, maybe the pantsing that Queensland needed to just put them back on the straight and narrow a little bit.
So, but yeah. Yep.
All right, and to finish us off today, we've got a couple of general questions, a quick couple of handball questions here. Do the AFL teams roll the dice once too often, trying to come back from too far from behind?
Oh, you don't want it. It's not a plan to get that far behind. It just happens. So, yeah, it's one of those things. It's not a plan.
Yep. So. Are Richmond going to bounce a lot quicker than we think?
Look, it depends on some of their injuries. You know, Gibbskus is an important player as a kid, and he's had all those hamstrings, comes back, then does an ACL. So when the start of next year, he's virtually going to have hardly played any football in 3 years.
Yep.
And he's a key player. Look, I think Grimes is probably gone. Prestia, there's big question marks. Dusty Martin, where he ends up. But I think he's finished anyway.
Baker's maybe on the move back to WA.
So there's a lot of question marks on them to come. Yeah.
But playing such the amount of young players that they've played, this is why I threw it on the agenda. Do we see them bouncing because of that?
It's a maybe. Yeah,
it's so hard these days.
They do have some good draft choices in this next draft.
Yep.
So,
yeah. It's going to be an interesting watch. And the last one, mate, could we ever see an AFL players strike?
I still doubt it, personally.
AFL has too much power?
Yeah, I still doubt it, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think they get together, the Players Association, that I'd be surprised.
I only throw it on the agenda on the basis that the inconsistent umpiring, some of the explanations that come from AFL House where they tick off on some and don't tick off on others. Is it a case that they could potentially get a bit frustrated with the process, or is it more?
I think that's more the clubs might get pissed off. I don't see the players move on from that. They just get on with it.
So the only time that may happen is if, financially when it comes to broadcast rights. And
that's more the side of things.
And that generally happens in most sports anyway. Yep. All right, mate, I think we'll leave it there. It's been a huge episode tonight. We thank Mary for her time on the soccer.
Yep.
We thank Tommy Warhurst, and as we said before, we're going to split that interview up over a couple of episodes. We thank him for his time. And, mate, I'm going to leave the good, the bad, the ugly for this week once again because we've squeezed in a lot already. Yeah. So we'll keep that and hold fire on that. But thank you once again for joining us. And as per usual, mate, we promise to do better.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you, mate.
In this crazy world we live in, we all need the distraction. Enjoying the show? Like, rate, and subscribe. Hook up and connect with us on social media at SportsCast SA. We'll see you next time on Game On.